We are continuing in the life of Abraham. We are at the end of Genesis chapter 14. And just by way of reintroducing things and putting things in the proper place, Abram, because that's his name at the moment, Abram, of course, has been called out of his homeland, Ur of the Chaldeans. He and his wife Sarai and his nephew Lot have been constantly moving as God has called them to move. And God has given Abram a promise that he would bless Abram, and he would bless those that bless Abram. He would curse those that curse Abram. He would also make Abram into a great nation. And that would mean Abram, how does Abram be a great nation? How could one person be a great nation? Well, he couldn't. So there is this idea that from Abram would be descendants who would become a great nation. But at this point in time, Abram is he's childless. He and Sarai have no children at all. Then we come to Abram going into Egypt and the things that occurred there, and we find out that Sarai is an extremely beautiful woman. She would be well into her 60s at this point, mid-60s at least, and still very much a beautiful woman, and attracts Pharaoh's eye, which is exactly what Abraham feared. He feared somebody in Egypt is going to want her and kill him for her. And he proposes a deception that they are not husband and wife, but they are brother and sister. And Pharaoh does see her as extremely attractive. No telling how many wives he has already. Matter of fact, it's his sons that tell him about her. It's the princes of Egypt that inform him of someone's come in around here, and you may take an interest in her. With the deception, Pharaoh has no idea. But there is something to be said that if they weren't married, that is, if Sarai and Abram were not married, then it would have been quite an honor for Abram to have become the brother-in-law of Pharaoh. That would have been an honor, and there would be honors with that. But they're not just brother and sister, they are actually step brother and sister. So saying she is my sister is correct, but it's not the whole truth. It's not everything that's needed. In this instance, in this situation, it's not the only thing that's needed, that she is my wife. Okay, and so we come on down. He sent actually packing. Leave, please, leave Egypt. And there comes a point, and as we go through the book of Genesis, Genesis tells us about people as we need to know about it, and details as we need to know about it. Up until chapter 13, we wouldn't really know how great a group, how big a group it is that is traveling with Abram and Sarai. We would know, obviously, Sarai's handmaid. We would know that of Lot. But, we don't even realize Lot has a wife and Lot has children until we're told later. But he does, until those points are relevant. And also of the men that are, and the herds that belong to Abram and to Lot, we don't know anything about it until it becomes relevant. In chapter 13, it's relevant that they're not getting along. The herdsmen are not. because they're competing for the same patch of ground. So the herds are too large to have all of them together. Therefore, Abram gives Lot the option. You go left, I'll go right. You go right, I'll go left. You do that. And Lot, of course, heads toward the plain of the Jordan, where there are extremely wicked cities. And Sodom and Gomorrah are two of those. They're not the only wicked cities, but they're two of those. And so he pitches his tent as far as Sodom, and come chapter 14, which is where we are, we have this ancient warfare, ancient conquest. And in those ancient days, there were empires. Now, in those days, they weren't as large as other empires would be. Simply because of means of travel, simply because of also population sizes. One couldn't have massive armies that one could have later in time when world population was larger. Because from the flood, we're still increasing, and there are entire peoples that don't exist yet, such as Israel, such as the Arabic people. They don't exist just yet, but world populations are increasing. And in this ancient world, there are battles and wars and conquests that go on, and you have these four kings that come from the east, and Chedorlaomer appears to be like the chiefest of them all. He seems to be like the head of it, not because he was named first, but because other things that are mentioned about him. But in those days, if you were going to travel, which is precisely what Abraham is doing, he's constantly traveling. If you were traveling, you would need people to be with you, because even in those ancient days, travel could be perilous. It all had to be, the travel he's doing is always on land. And when you're traveling on land, you have the potential of raiding parties. You have the potential of thieves. You have the potential of things going wrong, and you need protection. And so in those days, people would travel in groups, whether it's in large caravans, so you have protection in numbers, or if it's some official moving across the land, they would have a small army with them. Now, in fact, Abram has a small army with him, plus a lot of cattle. And so we see where these four kings from the east, they go in, and first off, they go against 6 nations to begin with. Chedorlaomer is, and he seems to be the one leading in all this. They go against the Rephaim. This is in chapter 14, verse 5. They go against the Zuzim, the Emim. They go against the Horites, the Amalekites, the Amorites. And this is before they get to the cities of Sodom, Gomorrah, Elam, Admah and Zeboam, there we go, and Bela, that is Zoar. That's before they even get to those. And some of these peoples they're going against are significant enemies, if you've made them into an enemy. The Zuzim are known to have been giants. Now, I don't know about the rest of them, but the Zuzim in Ham, that's in verse 5, they are known to have been giants. And so Chedorlaomer and these others going against them, okay, that's a significant enemy that you're going against. But they're able to conquer all these lands, all these peoples, and then continue on down southward toward Sodom and Gomorrah, down that plain of the Jordan, which at that time was extremely green. Now, after what happens to Sodom and Gomorrah, one can only think, and I think safely assume, that after that point, everything changed in that area with the raining down of fire and brimstone on those cities. Everything changed, and it is also evident in the text of Genesis that Moses, in writing this, is having to explain some things that the people in his day would not have known. They would not have known that the plains of Jordan were like that, or that they held such cities. They would not necessarily have known any of that. And he makes clarification. Now, in chapter 14, Abram, we find out, has men. And he has fighting men. Well, now that we understand a few things about travel in that day, you would need to do that. You would need to have a group, not going in just a small family. You'd need to have, because you would make yourself an easy target. But this is he's a large target, and he's a fighting force that is there. And Lot is captured by these four kings who have captured the cities of Sodom, Gomorrah, Admah, Zeboam, and Zoar, or Bela. These four kings have captured those cities along with the people that are there, and Lot goes with them. And he goes and he takes them back. He brings them back. He defeats those armies with the men that he has, and of course with God helping him. And he brings everything back. And a tenth he gives to Melchizedek. A tenth, and we see Melchizedek in verse 18. Now, we come to where we left off last week. Verse 21. Now the king of Sodom said to Abram, give me the persons and take the goods for yourself. So here the king of Sodom says, you can have everything that was captured from the cities except the people. Give me the people. As payment, you can have everything. And Abram is not going to do that at all. Abram doesn't want to do that. But Abram said to the king of Sodom, I have raised my hand to the Lord, God Most High, the possessor of heaven and earth, that I will take nothing from a thread to a sandal strap, and that I will not take anything that is yours, lest you should say, I have made Abram rich. Now, he's going to make an exception, but it's not for himself. He's going to make an exception. Verse 24, except only what the young men have eaten, and the portion of the men who went with me, Aner, Eshcol, and Mamre. These, let them take their portion. All right, so he gives a tenth of the spoil to Melchizedek. And he allows these young men who obviously they've eaten from some of the spoils, because there would have been food taken. And then others, which he names, who have taken their portion. But he's not going to take a portion at all. He's not, lest you say, I made Abram rich. He's not going to do it. You take everything back. And he's doing it. This was free of charge. And obviously, he has a vested interest because of Lot, his nephew, and Lot's family, who we are unaware of them just yet, but we'll find out about them. That he has this interest in saving them. Now we come to chapter 15. And in chapter 15, God is going to give Abram, he's going to tell Abram the future. And it's the future that's going in the next few hundred years. But we begin in verse 1. After these things, the word of the Lord came to Abram in a vision, saying, do not be afraid, Abram. I am your shield, your exceedingly great reward. But Abram said, Lord God, what will you give me, seeing I go childless, and the heir of my house is Eliezer of Damascus? That's one of his servants. Eliezer of Damascus evidently is so close to Abram that this is his heir. This is one of his servants is going to be his heir, Eliezer of Damascus. Now, God has told him he's going to make Abram into a nation, and he's already told him that your descendants will inherit this land. So that means he's got to have at least one child. He's got to have somebody, and at this point, there's nobody. At this point, he is childless. Now, here he asks about the fact that he has no offspring. No one born in my house is my heir at all. Verse 3, let's read that. Then Abram said, look, you have given me no offspring. Indeed, one born in my house is my heir. And behold, the word of the Lord came to him, saying, this one shall not be your heir, but one who will come from your own body shall be your heir. So Eliezer of Damascus, as nice of a fellow as he may be, he's not the heir, because that's not the son of promise. That's someone else's son, not Abram's son. But the heir is going to be your son, who's not with you yet. It's going to be in time, not with you yet. So it's a matter of faith and understanding. Eventually, Abraham will have a son. Eventually, Abraham could say to himself, eventually I will have a son. But this is one of those things of where each and every year it looks from our perspective unlikely. As a matter of fact, it starts off as highly unlikely and then goes to more and more and more unlikely each year that ticks by. That when is this going to happen? Because already it looked like it couldn't happen, but now it looks even worse. And God assures him, and he's going to give him a prophecy. He's going to give him an understanding of what is going to be happening within the next few hundred years. And actually, we will read those things in the book of Exodus. But, okay, your heir is going to be from your own body. Now, verse 5. Then he brought him outside, so it's at nighttime. He brought him outside and said, look now toward heaven and count the stars if you are able to number them. And he said to him, so shall your descendants be. So here it is nighttime. And, okay, in our night sky around here, we have so much light pollution. We're only able to see really just a handful of stars. We're not seeing as many stars as there are out there. And in growing up, the town I lived in, there was so much light pollution. It's not as much as where we are here. But there was so much light pollution there that I could see more stars from there than I can here. And I enjoyed looking at the stars. And I remember the first time I ever saw what the sky really looked like at night. And it overwhelmed me. I could not believe it. And it happened to be during a blackout. We lost power and all the lights in town were off. And then I stepped outside. I was with friends. We had decided we were going to go on a walk. It's better than sitting in a dark house. So we went for a walk, and I couldn't believe what I saw. I could actually see the Milky Way and all the vast stars, so many of them. And I hadn't a clue that there were so many. I had heard about it from Genesis, yes, but I had heard about it from science books, but in my mind, you couldn't see them. And then all of a sudden, there they are. And I could imagine from this point in time, every time that Abram looked into the night sky and was able to see those stars, he would remember what God told him. If you can count those stars, you can also count the number of your descendants. Now, we explained this before. The number of stars does not represent the number of his descendants. It doesn't represent that at all. Like for every descendant, there is one star. He's not saying that. He is saying that if you can count those, if you could gain that number, and God knows that he can't, and we know today that we can't. We just kind of give these loose estimates, as Carl Sagan would say, billions and billions. Well, that's, okay, that's just as helpful as saying a lot, okay, or an awful lot. That's just as helpful. And the accuracy is, there is no accuracy in that. You cannot count them even to this day. Just like you would be unable to know the number of the descendants of Abram. You can't. That would be an utter impossibility. Matter of fact, I would say it is more closely likely that you could number the stars than you could know the descendants, because you can't know that at all. But here is this promise. Here is this man with no children at all being told, your descendants will be as great as the number here. That so shall your descendants be. You cannot count them. Now here we go, verse 6. An important understanding of Abram. And he believed in the Lord, and he, that is God, accounted it to him for righteousness. He believed him. An old man, childless, being told your descendants are going to be as numerous as the stars in heaven, and he believes him. There is faith. There is faith that is there. He believes God can do it. And God does it. He's going to do it in his own time. Why does he wait? I don't know. I can't tell you. I can't tell you why God waits when he waits, or springs into action when he springs into action. That's beyond our comprehension. Unless he tells us, we can't really know. But one thing is sure, is that of testing Abram's faith, which will continue to be tested. But Abram believed him, believed God. And my question is, why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you believe it? Here, the creator of all things, the creator of all those stars cannot give you children that could be as great a number? How? Are you going to have just limit God's power by what you think? Because that's what a lot of people do. Limit God's power by what they think. It's very much like in Acts chapter 17, when Paul, talking to the Athenians, he's talking to them about deity and that God created all things, and they would agree with him on that. Though they would disagree on the name of that God and other things about that God, they would say someone like, they would attribute Zeus to certain things and Poseidon to certain things. But this is Jehovah. They agreed theoretically that yes, God did create all this thing. Everything that we see, including us. But when he spoke about the resurrection, okay, for a number of them, that was it. That was as far as they were going to go. Okay, how can you have a God that can create everything and yet cannot manage a resurrection? How does that happen? That God could not resurrect anyone that he wanted to. How does that even happen? But with them, their faith in God's ability went to a certain point. With Abraham, not so. With Abraham, he could have faith in him, and it's accounted to him for righteousness. Now, verse 7. Then he said, that's God said to him, I am the Lord, I am Jehovah, who brought you out of Ur of the Chaldeans to give you this land to inherit it. And he said, Lord God, how shall I know that I will inherit it? So he said to him, bring me a 3-year-old heifer, a 3-year-old female goat, a 3-year-old ram, a turtle dove, and a young pigeon. Then he brought all these things to him and cut them in two down the middle and placed each piece opposite the other, but he did not cut the birds in two. And when the vultures came down on the carcasses, Abram drove them away. Now comes the vision. Here comes the vision. Now when the sun was going down, a deep sleep fell upon Abram, and behold, horror and a great darkness fell upon him. All right, this would be a vision that's coming, and the vision comes with an emotion to it. Horror and great darkness. Why would that be? Well, one is that would be the emotion that God puts into this vision, I suppose, but also that of, now he's been speaking with God already, but here's a vision. This is something that he's going to see for as far as the future of his descendants that do not exist yet. It's the future of them. Then he said to Abram, know certainly that your descendants will be strangers in a land that is not theirs, and will serve them and will afflict them 400 years. Well, strangers in what land? Well, it doesn't say, but we know it's Egypt. And that's precisely what happens. How did they get there? It doesn't say. The book of Genesis is going to take us there. It's going to end up where they are in Egypt. But here is this foretelling, this prophecy of what's going to be happening to them. Verse 14, and also the nation whom they serve, I will judge. Afterward, they shall come out with great possessions. We know that from the book of Exodus. He will judge them. There's going to be 10 plagues. But it's not going to stop. It's not going to stop with the 10 plagues. Now that last plague, the 10th plague, death of the firstborn, that was the greatest blow against Egypt. The greatest blow. That every family would be affected by that. Either the person is the firstborn and they died, obviously they're affected by that, or they are other siblings and the firstborn just died. But also the firstborn of your children just died. And like with explaining, because of Catrice and myself, okay, like on my side of the family, my mom and my dad were not the firstborn. They weren't even close. One was 6th and one was 5. One was the 5th and one was the 6th. But aunts and uncles and cousins, and of course my sister, who's the oldest, and then the oldest of her children, the oldest of my son's children, along with his wife, she's firstborn. Catrice and I are not the firstborn, but we do have one who is firstborn. Seth would have been taken. On her side of the family, both of her parents would have died that night because they're both firstborn. And then Catrice's sister and then a nephew would have died. I mean, that's a lot of people just in our family. Just in our family, that's a lot of people died in one night. There is judgment there, but it's not through yet. The 10 plagues, when he says, I will judge, he will judge. He will judge. Then you have the army that's going to be, it's not coming home. That Egyptian army will not be coming home because it's kind of hard to explain if you were an Egyptian having witnessed that coming back and saying, okay, I got to tell you what just happened. Well, what just happened? They all got lost in the Red Sea. How did that happen? All right, how did that happen? Well, yeah, Jehovah, God, part of the waters, Israel, there's a nice dry path. Israel goes right through. And in madness, absolute madness, the Egyptians go in right after them. All right, that is madness. Someone in their right mind would say, okay, this is where we give up. Okay, yeah, we're not going into that. We're not going into that. How that's happening is beyond any power on earth. We're not going into that. We stop here and we can watch, but we're not going in those waters. Yet they do. They go right down in there, and it comes crashing right down on top of them. And guess what? When you are at the bottom of the ocean, you can't swim up in time to get your breath. The pressures of that water would keep you down. And depending on how deep you were, could immediately crush you. And that's it. That's it. And there is no surviving that. God says He would judge them, and He does judge them. And He says, judges Egypt, and He says, your descendants will come out with great possessions. Yeah, they go in with cattle and sheep, and that's pretty much it as far as possessions are concerned, aside from their own lives. But when 400 years later those descendants come out, they're going to be coming out with an extraordinary wealth. And it's going to be given to them by Egyptians who want them to leave. They fear them so much. They want them to leave. And they're going to be willingly give them anything to leave, because they have seen the devastation just pounding Egypt. And they leave with great possessions. And it is part of those great possessions that we see that are donated for the tabernacle. And they have all kinds of things. They have gold. They have brass. They have all types of fabric and the ability to weave fabric. They have all those things. Now we come to verse 15. Now as for you, you shall go to your fathers in peace. You shall be buried at a good old age. So here's an assurance from God that Abram is going to die of old age. Abram is going to, he's going to be seeing a good old age, and his life is going to continue. So at some point in these next years, before he reaches this buried at a good old age, before he reaches that point, he's going to have a child, and he believes God. Verse 16, but in the fourth generation they shall return here, for the iniquity of the Amorites is not yet complete. So he is in that land of Canaan that is going to be, at this point, that's where he is. And he's not in Egypt anymore. He's left out of there. He's not. He's just returned back from war, and presumably has left that area. We know that he was around Salem for him to even meet Melchizedek. So he is in that area, and God says in the fourth generation, they're going to return here. In the fourth generation, they will be back here. And they will be coming. And it's not yet. One is that he has no descendants at the moment. Number two is what God says, the iniquity of the Amorites is not yet complete. Meaning what? The Amorites and others, it might be added, well, their iniquity is noted, but it's going to be increasing through the centuries. It's going to get worse and worse and worse. And there will come a point in time where the Amorites have lost their privilege to exist. They've lost that privilege of where God says, okay, as a civilization, no more. As a civilization, that's it. Which is precisely what he does with Sodom and Gomorrah, precisely what he did with that world, with the flood, that he flooded the world to destroy mankind. They lost their privilege to exist. And that happens. That happens. Do we have evidence of things like that occurring? And the answer is yes, we do. We've got a world of evidence that such things do happen. Of ancient cities, and nobody lives in those cities anymore. They're only found by archaeologists. And cities even that they didn't have to dig up. They found the ruins and the remains of a very, very impressive people. South America comes to mind. Places like, well, Mexico, obviously, Peru, that of Bolivia, of where there are ancient places that you can tell whoever built this was powerful. And it, like with the Incas told the Spanish, they didn't build these things. These things were all already there by the they found them, but they were already there. And who were those people? Don't know. We can give them a name, but that's not the name they had. We don't know who they were. And there are peoples that we just know that they existed by the things that they left behind. But what happened to them? Obviously, they fell, or that city would have continued and just been built and built and built and continue to exist, as some cities do today. Just continue to exist. But at some point, their civilization came to an end. Wasn't it an act of God in all these cases? Obviously, I can't answer that. But I can answer the question of, is there evidence of such things ever happening? And yeah, there are. There are plenty of evidence that civilizations have been, cultures wiped out, that there really is no trace of them left except what they left behind. That's it. But he says, all right, the iniquity of the Amorites is not yet complete, meaning it will be. It will come. Verse 17, and it came to pass that when the sun went down and it was dark, that behold, there appeared a smoking oven and a burning torch that passed between those pieces. Those are the animals, the goat, the ram, these things that he cut them in two. And here is passing between the pieces. Verse 18, on the same day the Lord made a covenant with Abraham, saying, to your descendants I have given this land. And here he's defining it. He's defining where this land is. From the river of Egypt to the great river, the river Euphrates. The Kenites, the Kenizzites, the Cadmonites, the Hittites, the Perizzites, the Rephaim, the Amorites, the Canaanites, the Girgashites, and the Jebusites. All these, their lands will go to your descendants. Well, when is that going to happen? He already said 4 generations. He said that. He said that they're going to be in a land that doesn't belong to them. They're going to be strangers for 400 years. They're going to be there. And this is going to take a while. But here is this promise, and he's defining it. He's defining exactly what this land is. So there is no guessing, nor would there be any thought in Israel later on that we didn't get what we thought we were going to get. I imagine that we were going to get the whole coastline. I imagine that we were, you could have all kinds of imaginings of what they were going to get. But here is God defining it, exactly what they are going to get. Now, I want to make mention, and we've said it before, that this land promise God fulfilled in the days of Joshua. And I want to reiterate this time and time again when it comes around, because there are significant groups that to this day do not believe that land promise was completed. But God says it was completed. How do I know? Because Joshua tells us that it was completed. It was finished. The land promise was done. Now, if they didn't get every bit that they should have gotten, it's not God's fault. Because they left people there. They captured so many places, and God would have been with them if they had continued in that of capturing and expanding and taking everything that was rightfully theirs. He would have helped them all the way through, but they stopped. And God allowed for a certain period of time where He would have continued to help them if they have taken up the sword and gone and completed everything. He would have helped them, but the time ran out. And eventually, all right, it's done. Eventually, it's, okay, what you would have gotten, that's a closed door now. What you would have gotten, you had time to do, and it's obvious that you're not going to do it. So there it is. You'll never do it now. They will always be a thorn in your side. Now, chapter 16, which we're not going to start today. We will start it next week. Chapter 16, we have Abram, childless, and Sarai, his wife. Sarai knows what God has said to Abram. She knows it. And here is one of those cases of where she wants to help out God. And he doesn't need such help. That of wanting to help this come about, when God will make it come about, and there's nothing you could do to stop it, nor is there anything you could do to help it. It's going to happen. It's going to occur. And with her or without her, it's going to happen. And with her, it would have been best for her, and she would later realize this, it'd be best for her if she just allowed God to take care of it, allow Him to do it. But she thinks that she has a solution for all this. God knows what the solution is. And Sarai couldn't help any more in this situation than she could in helping those descendants when they're in Egypt, which would be years after she had passed. She wouldn't be able to help them. She wouldn't be able to help it come to be. And but this is one of those lessons of where the Bible shows people for the things that they do, whether good or whether bad. It doesn't present its people like stained glass windows or like marble statues that just this glamorized and utterly glorified person who cannot and never made a mistake, never had the thought of making a mistake. The Bible doesn't present people like that. The Bible presents people with their mistakes, with their flaws, and also with their successes, and with the things that they did right. But we will continue next week, and thank you, everybody.